Friend of the show and Montgomery County Council member Will Jawando is out with a new book. My Seven Black Fathers, a young activist memoir of race, family, and the mentors who made him whole. That not only details his life story, but highlights the importance of Black fathers in the community.
Will Jawando is with us to discuss the book and its themes a little bit more. Thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So tell us more about, what you go, Seven Black Fathers. What does that mean?
Right. Well, I am a normal human being. I have one biological father, but one of the real goals here is to expand the definition of fatherhood. Too often, I think, particularly in the context of Black men and boys, we hear about fatherless, but I was really fatherful. I had these men that stepped in at a key point when I was estranged from my father. My parents divorced when I'm 6, but even when he's in the house, I describe him in the book as an absent presence. He doesn't spend time with me. There's no engagement. And I have this deep void that is not uncommon. And these men step up all in different ways, from my 4th grade math teacher, Mr. Williams, to later in my life, President Barack Obama, when I'm working for him in the Senate and the White House, and give me the tools I need to not only be the man I am today, but also ultimately forgive my father. So it's really an homage to these men. It's a love letter to Black men and boys. It's an attempt to confront the stereotypes that unfortunately are still really present in our community, but also to the power of these relationships.
You mentioned, the stereotypes that are out there, and I wonder how you felt you should engage with them, given how that particular stereotype is politicized and used at times to justify, let's say increased police funding or lack of investment in communities. And there's oftentimes I've observed a shift to talking about kind of cultural, intimate family dynamics as a way to derail from certain kinds of policy conversations. How do you negotiate that tension as you go around talking about your book and in the process of writing this book?
Yeah, it was at the forefront of my mind. You all know I'm a civil rights lawyer. I'm a council member. I've dedicated my life to solving these larger systemic, problems that make opportunity more disparate for certain communities, right? And this is not a, pull yourself up by your bootstrap story. What it is that we are in this world, as Isabel Wilkerson says, we built this house that is America. We're in it with all its bruises and panels and sharp edges. And it's a world where there is inequality, but this is an affirmative story told through the lens of my life about the power of these men, particularly Black men in my life, to throw me a life raft, to help me navigate the world that I'm in. That doesn't mean we don't fix the systemic problems. And I talk about a lot of them in the context of my life, whether it's the school to prison pipeline. I talk about my friend Kalfani in this book who didn't make it. And I think he would have if he had these men. I talk about the study on race and economic opportunity that Raj Shetty at Stanford and Harvard did that really puts a robust framework around these inequities, even when you control for a level of income of the parents and, same 2-parent or 1-parent household, et cetera. You have wide earnings gaps for Black boys and white boys from the same communities. And I frame the conversation that way. But I think the stereotypes that we're trying to attack here are that these men are in communities everywhere across the country doing this, but we need to enable more of those relationships while we fix the policy. It's not an either or, it's a both and.
Certainly, and I think the pandemic actually has really made clear how vital community services, neighborly kind of situations are to people who are deprived at certain points of their life of strong family ties. That's when the community steps up. That's when you rely on other things, and we're seeing this increase in kind of antisocial behavior, sometimes criminal behavior from the sort of at-risk youth population, often poor, often minority. And I think it's no accident that the shuttering of so many of those services for the last 2 years had some really dire consequences that we didn't totally think through, given how important those things can serve as stabilizing forces. And I wonder if that connects a little bit to what you're talking about here.
Sure. Oh, sure. Absolutely. There's a relationship, right? I mentioned my friend Kalfani, who I meet in 5th grade and we're best friends. He's the cool kid, the best kid in basketball, popular. I'm the opposite of that in middle school, like many of us were. chubby, being bullied. And he takes me
I was
under his
extremely cool in middle school, so I'm just going to stop you right there. I'm kidding. Go ahead.
A few, my friend. You were one of the few. But he really is a peer mentor and almost a peer father figure to me, and takes me under his wing. But unfortunately, he loses his life as we're coming out of high school. And I attribute it to many things, but one is that I talk about this distinction between decision kids and destination kids in the book. Calfani was a decision kid. So every day after school, when the bell rang, he had to decide where he was going to go. There was no after school program. His mother worked 2 low-wage paying jobs, and his dad wasn't in the picture. And he got involved in things he shouldn't have been involved in, and ended up losing his life in a drug deal going bad. I had a place to go. I was a destination kid. And my place to go, not only did I have a place, it was my mom's job. It was one of these 1% zip codes that I talk about with this study, where there is a higher proportion of Black working class fathers in them. And I meet 4 of my 7 Black fathers that I talk about in this book in this zip code, 20910 in downtown Silver Spring. So I have no doubt that not only in my life, but if these relationships, these programs, you can meet these men in a number of settings. You can meet them at an after-school program. You can meet them in a sports program. You can meet them at school. One of them is my 4th grade math teacher, Mr. Williams, who is the only Black male teacher I ever have, who teaches me how to tie a tie and helps me with bullying. These men, these people are out there. We have to enable those relationships. And I do think that has been a failure as a society and as individuals, that we haven't done enough of it.
I wonder, Will, what you make of some folks' observations in the wake of the Buffalo shooting, that the conversation doesn't seem to have focused on the parents of the shooter the way so often it does when there's an incidence of Black crime. We often hear it starts at home. And in contrast, when we're talking about the white Buffalo shooter, many of the pictures that have been used are family shots of him around the Christmas tree in matching pajamas, in a way that is in stark contrast from how even some Black victims of shooting are portrayed. And I wonder what you make of that.
Yeah, well, one of the things I really hope to do with this book as well, there's a lot going on, and I think it's a good read, is to underscore the complexity and the diversity and the strength and power of Black men and boys. There has been an intentional effort over hundreds of years to demonize, to dehumanize, and to really build up a narrative about Black men and boys, but also about people with disabilities, LGBTQ, other communities, but particularly Black men and boys, to justify a system of chattel slavery and Jim Crow and mass incarceration that has benefited some and disadvantaged others. And because of that, I think there's a ton of research out there, for example, that Black boys, for example, once they turn a certain age, and it's a very young age, they're no longer seen as children. Their innocence is taken from them, and they are looked at as criminals and something to be feared. I think we are dealing with that in this Buffalo situation, where the default is to go back and say, well, this must be an aberration. Look, the family he's around a Christmas tree. You don't see that when you talk about other people, particularly Black men and boys. And I think that is a problem. And one of the things I hope to show here is that we are the treasure of our own communities. We are complex, we are full people, and we have a power within ourselves to counteract these stereotypes and really save each other's lives as we work on the systemic issues.
Yes, certainly I'd love to see more humanization of all people, including white teenagers, not less dehumanization of them to equal them out with the dehumanization
Absolutely.
of Black boys that's happening.
Absolutely.
So
we did talk, though, yesterday on the show. Kim and I talked about the responsibility that the parents have in that case. Why don't I support? I'm a full supporter of the Second Amendment and gun rights. Don't bring a gun into a household with a deranged antisocial kid who has been reported to the school authorities multiple times. If you do that, I don't know if you bear legal responsibility, but you absolutely bear moral responsibility for that situation, in my opinion.
Yeah. But you bring up a good point. We want humanization for everybody. We all just want to be seen as who we are, fully complicated people who are trying to achieve their potential.
Yeah. Well, we're so excited to check out the book. It is, I'm going to read the title again, My 7 Black Fathers, a Young Activist Memoir of Race, Family, and the Mentors Who Made Him Whole. Will Jawando, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I look forward to seeing you guys reading the book and talking some more.
Absolutely. And we'll be back with more Rising right after this.